welcome everybody to today's CMX London event. It's a CMAD, Community Manager Appreciation Day themed event, and I'm really excited on what we have on store for you today. Thanks so much. We have attendees who are joining us from London, from Hampshire, from Nottingham. We've got from other parts of the UK, we've got Latvia, we've got India, we've got Madrid, and we've got a few other different places where people have joined us. Everybody is always welcome to a CMX London event. It is an absolute pleasure to see you all with us. In the first few minutes in our chat, if you can just tell us who you are, what community you're building, and where you're joining us from, that would be fantastic, just so you can get a full sense of who's here. So we're going to start seeing people trickle in over the next couple of minutes. So I'm just going to start telling you a little bit about CMX London. So you should see a slide which is now telling you a little bit about CMX London, which is helping community professionals to thrive. That's the whole idea of the CMX Connect program. So CMX Connect itself, you might not have heard of it, but actually it's a program of a community of kind of networking, community of practice for community professionals, people who are new to community building, people who've been doing it for a few years. It's great to kind of bring everybody together. There are at least 60 chapters of CMX Connect, including various different places, San Francisco and Mumbai and in Lagos and other brilliant places. So the goals of CMX Connect, for those of you who aren't familiar, are to connect, to meet one awesome person. So if you can come away from today's event or any other CMX Connect event having met one, really great person, that's a winner. The second is to learn. So if you can get one actionable thing that you can implement today, then that's fantastic. You've come away with something that's helpful and that's practical, then that's great too. And the third thing is CMX Connect is about advocating. We're about growing the community industry, the community profession, not only in sense of getting more people interested in community careers, but also equipping people to have more confidence in their community careers, and as a whole profession to be standing together and to be kind of cheering each other on. So that's CMX Connect. So I want to introduce our panelists and tell you a little bit more about them. So I'm actually really excited about this because I know Christy and Blaze very well. And they have been people who I actually consider mentors in the community profession because I've learned a lot from them and their experience, and they are continuing to do fantastic work. Now, Blaze actually organised pretty much the first Community Manager Appreciation Day event in London back in 2010. I remember us being in a small pub chatting about what the community profession might be like in the future, and to think that 12 years later, we're seeing so many people interested in this real kind of boon in community, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to be hearing more from Blaze. He's worked for multiple different organisations, global organisations, and has helped build teams, has worked agency side, has helped all sorts of folks. So I'm happy to hear more from him. I'm sure you'd be very excited to hear from Blaze too. And also Christy Fedura. Christy is Director of Global Developer Marketing at Salesforce, and was also involved in organising community manager events in London. I think she came up with the CMGR London hashtag and was organising community events, including CMAD events in London. And she also helped to curate the community track of DevRelCon in London, which I was absolutely delighted to be a part of. So yeah, Christy's just done incredible things in Salesforce and is a fantastic and very inspiring leader, and someone as a female kind of leader in community, someone I really impressed by. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to ask Blaze and Christy to join me because, yeah, I'm just so excited. Sorry, I'm getting very excited. I've told the folks that I haven't had any sugar just because I don't need any, but it's an absolute pleasure to have you both with us today. So let's start. Blaze and Christy, how are you both doing? How's today looking?
Very well, thank you. Very happy to be here. It's always lovely to be amongst.
Super delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. You're both brilliant. So let me start. So Blaze, let's start with you. Tell me about your community story. So how did you get started in the community profession?
Well, I mean, I basically applied for a part-time moderator role at an agency that is long defunct in 99 or 2000. Partly because I wanted to work from home because I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd done a master's in information security, and I think at the time the information security industry was struggling after 9/11. So it was just something to do, but I'd done my dissertation on online piracy groups and how they mobilized through ICQ and BBSs and so on. So I was quite interested in how people communicated, I think, and had a real draw to computers and the internet. So there, I mean, I worked, my main clients there were the BBC forums and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which they'd acquired at the time.
Wow.
I used to work through the night, checking all of the articles, which were all user generated, making sure they were okay and were fit for the BBC's purposes. And then, yeah, PlayStation forums was the other big one, I'd say. I think I just missed, I mean, I'm sure the name Vincent Boone resonates. I just missed him.
Yeah.
I think I was just before him there. And then, yeah, I mean, basically, I'd sort of started, you know, we were dabbling with community management, which was still very new for agencies to be supplying.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get my hands dirty, you know, on the brand side. So I joined what was then the Handbag Publishing Group, which was a group of female publishing websites. Built up the forum there to, I mean, basically when they were acquired by the Hearst Corporation, the forums contributed about 60% of traffic. So I like to think that was
incredible.
where most of the value was coming from.
That's a nice chunk of traffic, isn't it?
Well, it shows that there is an ROI to community because they, you know, if you think about publishing, basically Hearst bought page impressions. And I know it's not the typical KPI we go after, but it had a huge value. So when I was there, you know, helped them set up communities for most of their magazines, you know, amongst others, Cosmo, Harper's Bazaar, and so on. And then social media came along as we know it. So I ended up as a roving internal consultant, effectively running workshops to editors saying, this is how you use Twitter. Yes, your computer screen is too small. You shouldn't have to scroll, you know, let's get that replaced and so on. So yeah, so it was a very exciting time. And obviously publishing has always been at the forefront of community and social media, I think, because fundamentally it's about content. Yeah, and then, I mean, just a highlight there, I remember organising with the Cosmo Online editor the very first Cosmo Blog Awards, which was basically designed to, you know, showcase bloggers in those days around, you know, the female space. And this was, you know, massively predated both influencer economy and then the creators economy. So effectively, we were platforming user content and giving it recognition. So no, I'm very proud of that. It's a small footnote, but it still makes me chuckle. And then, yeah, then I went to then e-moderation, which became the Social Element as it is now. Worked with companies as diverse as MTV, Nissan, HSBC, lots of global infrastructure builds. So, you know, we folded in community principles into social media engagements, but I probably focused, I think the term now that's been used as community ops, I'd say that's basically what I was doing, you know, teams of 50 to 100s, centralized policies, centers of excellence, massive social listening dashboards, things like that. Yeah. So, you know, how do we do this at scale, multilingual, across the world, with remote teams, you know, all of that.
The real engine room of community, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's potted history. I mean, I suppose the only other thing to say is, yeah, I was made, I joined the executive team in 2015 as initially an innovation exec, and then became what was then, you know, my title was Chief Services Officer, but I suppose CSO, CCO. Yeah, I mean, I held that for a few years. So, yeah, I mean, I really benefited from being integrated into the business aspect. You know, it wasn't really about, you know, delivering engagement and community building. It was really business, and that was a fascinating insights to be in the boardroom, both with my colleagues but also with clients, you know, meeting executives at other big corporates. It completely turns your head as to what the real thinking is and how community integrates.
Yeah, and I imagine, you know, just seeing kind of where community fits into that big strategic kind of discussion, and seeing those opportunities and trying to harness those opportunities, which is a lot of the discussion we're hearing nowadays. To think actually that there are people pioneering this and are continuing to pioneer this. So yeah. Oh, do you know what? I've just listened to that and I just thought that is majorly impressive. You're a hero of mine, Dave. I'm sure you probably already know that. We met down the pub in August and I said to him, do you know what? I remember coming to the first CMAD event and you were a bit surprised, but yeah, absolute pleasure to have you join us. So Christy, you know, your career at Salesforce has been absolutely immense as well. Tell us about your community story. How did you get involved in the community profession?
You want me to go after all of that?
Well, sorry. No, you've got some incredible stories to tell, including the DevRel contract, which I think is an incredible achievement too.
Well, I think probably the first thing that I would say is that I was kind of an outsider in school, right? And when you're an outsider, but you're a joiner at heart, you kind of see what you want and then you figure out a way to get it. So I went to university and I joined a social club, and I quickly realized I'm not really a member because I'm very bossy. I'm much better at organizing, showing people how to get to places, and so I was always holding some sort of, you know, position in my social groups. And then when I left university, I took on a role as a technical writer. And very frequently, when you're a technical writer, you work with a community of developers, but you might not have a community of technical writers. You might be the only technical writer, or you're in a very, very, very tiny group of people who are doing monumental things. And so I really got to spend a lot of time with developers, and I just loved what they were doing. To me, they were artists who were painting with code instead of a paintbrush, and I valued what they were doing and delivering. But I wasn't a developer, so I was always on the outside of that sort of community. And eventually, to from Virginia to California, California to London, again, kind of looking for my tribe, looking for my people. And of a subsequent number of roles later, I ended up becoming the marketing manager for Adobe Systems to market two of their software products, which actually were built for technical writers. And as the recruiter famously said to me, it's irrelevant that you don't know marketing, you know the products and you can figure out how to market them. So great, I'll become a marketing person then. And so yeah, he was a recruiter. I mean, you know, those people can sell ice to Eskimos. So I started working for Adobe and I realized I didn't know much about marketing, but I really liked people and I really understood what the users of these products were trying to do, and I started bringing their stories to bear, right? And I ended up community of influencers who could help me understand how to sell and market the software. So that worked out really well. And then I took on a role at Adobe running the community for the European, Middle Eastern, and African regions. And that was my first foray as a proper community manager. And I had to figure out what it meant to be a community manager. I had a team, but they were all located in California. I was the only one off soil. And so I had to kind of maneuver my way around what does being a community manager mean, and going from my technical background of instructional content, okay, well, I know I need to provide them with content and resources and assets and tools, and going from my marketing background, okay, I need to measure this. How am I going to show what my people are capable of unless I'm standing up for them? And then I took my love of being the person in charge and I brought that, I acted as the liaison between the company and the community. worked out really well. And subsequently, I have now joined Salesforce. I've been there, just celebrated my 5th anniversary. And again, I'm just constantly interacting with and engaging with the community. But what's so super amazing about the Salesforce community, way back when, I think it was 2014 when I was running Community Manager London group. No, I'm sorry, it must have been later than that. I had Erica Cool come and speak at a Community Manager London meetup. And Erica was the VP of Community at the time and for Salesforce, and she had the most incredible story. And basically, she just was a hard grafter, and she just worked really, really hard to prove the value of the community. And I loved the fact that she had a numbers approach, but a community heart, right? Like she had a numbers mind and a community heart. And she really empowered the community. And now I'm so lucky because I favorite things together of marketing to developers and also the incredible, powerful, thriving, growing, passionate Salesforce community. So yeah, it's been a wild kind of ride, but here we are.
Absolutely. And I think that, just trying to balance those two, the business head, that numbers aspect, and also the empathic or the heart kind of focus, that ultimately we're in the people business, which is one of my favorite John Coke quotes, the first community manager. But yeah, just this whole idea of actually that balancing those two things, especially when you're managing people or you're leading people or, you're dealing with people, just this idea of, you come alongside them and you're kind of meeting needs, and that's really powerful. Thank you. Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm just getting very excited, folks. So Blaise, let me move over to you and ask, so it sounds like, lots of challenges, lots of, difficult things and also great things over the years for you. What would you say helps you to stay motivated?
Well, I mean, I'll probably start that off with a reference to, I mean, I assume people know Malcolm Gladwell, the writer, and one of his books is about the Netscape founder, and it really resonates. There's a little passage in there that says, he basically got to where he was by fumbling in the dark, and then discovering things. And I mean, suddenly, as much as my trajectory seems very clear, it didn't feel like it at the time. I mean, there was a lot of questions throughout. So I mean, certainly for me, I think the 3 probably planks that I've learned or followed. I mean, the first one is I've just benefited from staying fresh. And I think, in 2014, we were looking to pivot e-moderation into a full service agency rather than really focused on moderation and engagement. So I spent a year basically learning, well, initially about, I analysed all of the other agency ecosystems out there, the big agency groups, what they did, how they presented themselves from a marketing perspective, the services they did, because my logic was, if we, at the moment, we're positioning what is perceived to be a sort of end of line service, right?
Yeah.
Moderation and engagement is seen as, you've got marketing campaigns and then it cascades all the way down. How could we change that narrative and present ourselves chameleon-like into something that was strategic and consultative? So in the process, I learned all about marketing. I learned all about the depths of strategy and insights, which I am a strategist, but I mean, I learned about deep strategy, should we say, brand strategy. I then learned all of the innovation systems and methodologies, which was an absolute eye-opener, because then I managed to integrate a lot of that into how I communicated with clients.
Yeah.
So rather than making up stuff and trying to shoehorn terminology and systems that they just didn't comprehend, I started adopting language that they did and that they had already been exposed with. Then clearly, because we were essentially pivoting the entire business model, that's when the journey into business modeling, business planning, finances, and I was very lucky to be, to have access to, over my time there, 2 incredible FDs, both one very, very analytical, the other one who actually had sold a company of his own. He had a sales background, so he presented that kind of, well, if it doesn't sell, then ultimately what is its value? So it's the 2 sides of the numbers and how to present things, I think, and how to explain the value of things. So, you know, ultimately all of that, it's just an open mind and making sure that you're not continuously feeding yourself new stuff.
Yeah.
Because then it's not really about community management, it's about connecting people, but using this huge range of functions, I suppose. Every function is about connecting people in some way, just in very varied ways. I think the other thing is, you know, in the process, sometimes we're very stressful. It can be very overwhelming. You can hit a lot of roadblocks. So looking after yourself, you know, I know you wrote a fantastic article recently. I think knowing when to take that step back, I certainly didn't several times throughout my career. I mean, I have a chronic disease that I have to manage, but also, you know, I tend to, because I get very passionate, I get very stressed, and because I get very stressed, I then move into anxiety, and you know, and so on and so forth. So I've, you know, I've experienced the worst of that, and I've learned a lot from it. And I think that's the one thing I'd put across is whether you're managing a community or navigating organizational dynamics, you've got to learn to manage yourself ultimately. And that really made a difference to me. And then the final thing is really just staying humble. And I was reminded, you know, it's something I've sometimes struggled with, but when I went freelance after my last engagement, I spoke with Darren, who Darren Goff, who I don't really need to present, but I mean, you know, I was talking to a lot of people. I was talking to a lot of people about, you know, what do you recommend and how do you think I should pursue this journey? And he just said, oh, you know, the only thing I can put across is staying humble. And it was a really resonant moment because fundamentally, understanding that you need an open mind, that case studies you read are very specific. You know, everyone wants to have 20 million followers like Coca-Cola, but you're not Coca-Cola. Everyone wants to, you know, do what a consultant says you should do. But again, it's very simplified and it's very specific. So just staying open, seeing things as prompts, not absolutes. Yeah, just being curious. I mean, I know it's a bit trite, but yeah, curiosity got me here.
I hear you that, and the stay fresh, stay humble, self-care. If I could say put them into 3 S's, that's I love that.
I'm stealing that.
I love that. Christy, so what would you add to that in terms of staying motivated?
For me, it's all about my people. What is it that my people need? You know, I love the fact that Blaze is really looking at it from his perspective, but I always look at it from their perspective. And I feel that there's never know everything. I have to ask, I have to engage, I have to be amongst them. I say all the time, I have to be with my people, right? And the pandemic has been very hard for me because I've been sat in this chair in this room for many months, as have many of you.
I hear you.
And I haven't been able to be with the people. And you know, the Salesforce community is incredible. They are self-motivated, they are self-activating, they host their own conferences, and so there's always an opportunity to be with them. But you know, I don't want to turn this into a physical events chat. That's not is seeing what your people need and understanding them and actually just asking them. And I think a lot of times in community management, we're busy, right? Like community managers are some of the busiest people in the world because they don't have a lot of support. They have a lot of things that they have to manage. They have to individually manage expectations as well. And they're frequently the sole point of contact at their organization between them and the community. And that's why, you know, when I had the pleasure to meet my buddy Alex Shabar, who's moved back to America now. You know, I ran, exactly. He was the community manager for Yelp, and I ran into him at the Social Media London, you know, and we were just chatting, and I was like, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I'm a community. I was like, I'm a community manager. Oh my gosh. And so wouldn't it be great if we could get together and brainstorm sometimes or just be support for each other? And so that's why we created the group. But then at that time, burgeoning of creating the industry of community management. And so there were a lot of learnings that people could share. People like Blaze, people like Darren, you know, people like Erica, come please and explain to us what you do and how you do it and why you do it. But for me, it's all about being willing and able, and also creating the infrastructure so that our people can tell us what it is that they need, and then trying to make that happen for them, right? Because they're not, the community is not the community because of Christy. The community is the
No.
community because of the organization that it's built
Yeah.
around, whether that's a church or whether that's your social group, you know, whether that's some tuba players, whatever your interest, your common interest is, you are there because of that common interest, not because of the person, right? So
Absolutely.
it's my job to listen to what you're saying and bring that back into the organization in a constructive, helpful way that doesn't overwhelm the organization, right? You can't overwhelm them with information. You have to say, look, I've done some research, I've talked to the folks, and this is what they're saying that they need. What do you think about that? How can we give that to them in a meaningful way? Or how can we support and enable them, right? And that for me is what it's all about, is staying connected with them.
That is really great, because that's a slightly different angle to what Blaise has said, but lots and lots of things that are resonant, and you know, just thinking again, 3 P's I heard from you, which was the people focus, peer support, and practical insight. So, and absolutely, so that I don't know, quite I'm in the zone today.
You're so good at that, Serena. You're so good.
Well, you know,
I think we have a white paper. Come
on. a writer / community manager, who knows? But yeah, let's do it together, folks. But yeah, I think the learning from each other on like how we stay motivated, you always learn something from someone else, a slightly different angle. And actually it's something new to try, or it's something you hadn't thought of. And yeah, absolute pleasure just to hear from you both. As we wrap up, because I know we're going to be heading into groups very soon, and we were going to do 20 minutes, we might do slightly shorter in our groups, just so that we can really kind of protect the time to hear those insights. So just to think, so Blaise and Christy, if you could just give me a sense of the future of the community profession. So we're now in 2022. You know, what are your predictions? What are your thoughts on community? I know that's a huge question, but any thoughts that you have?
Well, when you sent this question through, Serena, I was like, who does she think she's talking to? Like, why would I know that? I mean, that's an impossible question. But actually, you know, has this pandemic just not been the most fascinating socio-ecological, environmental experiment ever, right? It's been incredible. And it's been incredible to see how people have responded to it and what kinds of things that they're doing. As I said before, the Salesforce community, they like to get together in person. Well, they haven't been able to do that. So they've actually regrouped, right? They've doubled down on their virtual experiences and staying connected to one another. And I absolutely like to do that in the middle of a pandemic when you have personal things going on, but to still come together with your community not only makes you supportive, but it also makes you brave. And I so value that. But I would say hybrid experiences are definitely something to keep in mind, and to make sure that you're helping your community get together if possible. Like, we're so lucky now because we're in 2022 and there's so much technology at hand. Throw technology at the problem, right? Like, enable your people to connect in any way that they can, because if you're not there with them, they're probably talking about you anyway. It would just be really great if you could be there to hear that.
Oh yeah.
You know, for companies, they're becoming much more, you know, digitally focused and, you know, really reliant on data. So what kind of data can you provide back to the organization? But I think there's also this thing about, you know, social justice, and people are more willing to join in about things that really bother them, things that they want to change. But I think, you know, if we look back to the civil rights movement, it was, you know, oh, I'm going to go on a march, I'm going to do this type of thing. And people just sort of forgot about that. I mean, there's been a few things like Greenpeace or what have you, but in general, it's mostly been, I want to make some noise. But now there's this passion for, my noise better make some change as well. And so I think people are more digitally aware of how they can collaborate together to make effective change. And finally, I think personalization is definitely going to be key for your community, your stakeholders. You know, people want clever technology that knows them. They don't want to waste their time with some generic stuff. So I think that type of thing has to come into play as well.
Yeah, I think that for me, just that, the data, be smart, seeing smarter data going on, not just like numbers for the sake of it, and just thinking about social activism. I think, one of the useful applications of DAOs will be kind of what emerges in the non-profit space around that, personally, as long as you consider trust and safety, as I always say. But then also thinking about personalization and, like, the end of the generic. So just this idea of actually there being more personalized experiences. What would you add to that, Blaise?
That was very thorough. I was just looking at my notes thinking, oh my goodness, what can I? No, you mentioned trust and safety, so I'm going to try and weave in a couple of my points. So, I think I've consulted over the years with social networks and been involved in some of the challenges around moderation and maintaining safe spaces. And my take on it is typically, platforms tend to go for explosive growth first and figure out the infrastructure later, which doesn't lend itself to trust and safety. And certainly, I remember working with one of the big networks on, how do we automate some of this moderation, because we just can't pay for people to be checking everything. And the thing is that there is no technology that can do it at the moment in a forget cost-effective way, just in a technical way, particularly in the range of languages needed. And this isn't a plug, it's really, because I think it's a good example. The social network who are one of my clients at the moment, Gills, beyond offering something a bit more personable around, the equivalent of LinkedIn groups for people, this sort of more professional space, very, very hyper-focused and geared towards that kind of association discussion. They've started, at the beginning of their journey, they have trust and safety at the core. Everything is checked, everything's moderated. And I think that's the only way that platforms can maintain that thread throughout their development, is by having it at the start. And again, I've worked with a few startups who attempted it. As many startups don't work out. We haven't necessarily seen them get to hyper growth. But what is pleasing is that more and more of the prospects and clients that I speak with are coming saying, we've just started our community journey, we've just started our social media journey, we want to get it right from the off. What policies do we need, what procedures? And again, it's that community ops side of it. So I think that will continue, because the reality is that a lot of the conversations are crap. They're toxic, they're unpleasant. You can't build positive engagement in a sense of unpleasantness. And the reality is that there's a lot of content out there that is just not conducive to that. So, but I think we're moving in that direction, and the law will take care of the rest in making people, big companies, do it. And then talking about platforms, I think we're seeing some consolidation. I mean, to touch on your analytics aspects, the reality is that a lot of other functions have very mature analytical models. Marketing is a case in point, customer service as well. And we've seen community and social media come up from that and sort of integrate from bottom up into those functions, which I think is why we still don't see really widespread CCO, CSO roles, because fundamentally that function tends to live within a CMO or whatever. So, but I think as those tools, those dedicated tools, are being bought up, acquired and integrated into the Adobes, into the Salesforce and so on, those big organizations will apply their effectively analytical science models onto it and figure out a lot of the questions that still remain to be asked. And also we'll see better integration. I mean, we worked with the clients and we managed to integrate the social media KPIs into their marketing KPIs in a way that actually showed conversion. And we moved almost into the causation model. I mean, I don't want to say we did, but it was definitely no longer guesswork, and it was a bit more than correlation, which is the holy grail in showing ROI. So I think that will, we're going to see a maturity in terms of the analytics, which will then drive further adoption and a desire for experimentation, which will drive the industry forwards from a professional level. And then the final point I will make, and I mean, I've been building and managing remote teams and hybrid teams for 2 decades now. And I'll be brutally honest, I've just used community management techniques. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a particularly good manager in the sense that I'm not a manager. I've just used rituals and healthy participation models, and worked to think about, how do I get people to collaborate online? Okay, how do I get my employees to collaborate effectively on their internal networks? And I think we as an industry have a lot to say on that. Again, I get a lot of people come to me saying, we've got this hybrid model, we've moved fully remote, but oh my God, it's not quite working. Like things aren't clicking, or people aren't talking to each other, or people are getting burnt out. And actually, we know all the answers to that, or at least we have a good idea of what they could be. So I think the internal, that internal community, internal comms aspects of things is growing by default, but I think we have a very big voice to express in that.
I think that for me, hearing some of the conversations that I think Community Roundtable have been kind of leading on around, all management is community management, and actually community management shows the future of management, and this idea of actually community principles, the principle of bringing people together, fostering trust, fostering belonging, connecting people. Organizations are effectively communities and communities of practice. So starting to see people realize that, I think in this suddenly remote, I think it's brought it really to the fore, hasn't it? People have started to notice that more and more. And remote work organizations, in culture-wise, I know some of them have their issues, but culture-wise, they do seem to have much more of a handle on that than other organizations that are still kind of trying to get their heads around how do you bring people together meaningfully. That's incredible. I've jotted down multiple things around like this re-emergence back to smaller social, which feels like it's Web 1 again in some respects. So we're breaking away from these bigger companies in some respects.
Well, I think it could encourage adoption. I mean, the metaverse, I didn't raise the metaverse because I think it's a whole other discussion, and I don't think it's a 2022 thing. I mean, the reality is these things are bigger sizable, but I think if we unleashed Twitter into the metaverse, it would be absolute chaos. It would be horrific. That's as it is now. And I think we can build safe, enjoyable spaces in the metaverse with a smaller mindsets, which can then scale up. But the reality is, social net Web 2.0 hasn't fixed its issue.
Exactly.
So what do we expect from the metaverse?
Exactly. And this idea of actually, are we breaking away from something where there's problems to trying to grab onto the next new thing to try and, well, that's one of the cynical view in the tech world at the moment, around people just cutting and running to the new thing because they don't want to accept responsibility for the current problems, which I suppose, who knows, maybe that's the case.
Well, my kids do that. They make a mess in one room and then they run to the other.
Quite.
It's not an answer.
Are we seeing that in the tech world? Who knows? Who are we to say? But I think that's there's so many great insights there, and I just have been feverishly jotting down, as I'm sure many other folks have been on the call today. So I think what we'll be doing, there's a couple of questions. So while we get the room set up, if you guys look on the Q&A tab, you'll see there are a couple of questions there. It'd be great if you can think of any kind of quick fire answers to those just before we go head into our, probably do about 10 minutes in our small groups. So there's a question there around managing multilingual community. I think that might be a whole other topic.
Happy to come back on that. I mean, what I would say is, if you want a quick shortcut, if we do a future session on that, if you go to thesocialelements.com, there's a couple of white papers on there which I co-wrote at the time. I mean, they're a bit outdated, but they're good insights in what it could look like, because they're still very, very rare. Truly integrated and centralized pan-European and global models. So it might help.
Thanks, Blaise. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think OutSystems as well is someone I'd probably flag as well. Jen Sable Lopez in that area. Anything around self-care and personal boundaries? Oh, that's a cracking one. Thanks, Lauren, for that question.
I think the most important thing is to know what your boundaries are and stick to them. And if you have to resort to the old Post-it note on the laptop, do that, right? Because keep your boundaries clear. And boundaries are something that I have no knowledge of. They're completely unknown to me. I never knew what they were. And after spending the past 2 years having some really good coaching, I now understand what boundaries are. And it's easier to draw the line and to stick to the line and hold that line once you know what the boundary is. But I think for community managers, it's really difficult because, you know, you might have a community manager who's going through a personal tragedy, or you might have one that can only talk to you at 10 o'clock at night, your time, or, you know, they have people's lives are messy, and the more you care about their lives, the harder it is for you to stay sane in your own life. So I would recommend try to shut down when you can, try to step away, but understand what your boundaries are. You know, make a list. It could be something like, no matter what happens, literally no matter what happens, I am not checking my phone starting at 7 o'clock on Friday night until 9 o'clock Monday morning. Or I'll work all day Saturday, but then I'm not going to be online on Wednesday, right? Like, and you know, I think typically management doesn't really care how much time you're spending with community. It's what you're willing to give out to community. So you have to put some little yellow sticky notes in front of yourself to kind of keep you within a healthy place. But sometimes you know, it's confusing. But I would say know your boundaries, understand them, and try and enforce them. Consider yourself to be your own best community member. Look after yourself the way you would somebody else.
That and absolutely, I'd echo that. In terms of self-care discussions, I often ask people, if a friend asked you how to look after themselves, what advice would you give? And it's the idea of, why do we give other people advice that we don't necessarily take ourselves? So yeah, I hear you on that. We will be moving into the room shortly. There was a question around inspiration. So any kind of books or newsletters, people you kind of, who inspire you in the community world?
Well, I mean, I'll just give one. I mean, the thing is, there's so many. It's, you know, it's hard to, and it wouldn't be fair really to flag specifics out. And you know, to my point earlier, I think actually I've probably learnt more at this stage of my career reading outside of the industry. I think when you start, you know, the reality is there's lots of fantastic inspiration. Once you have a framework, you can then layer other ideas onto it. But no, just because this is a bit personal in a good way, one of the things I thought about doing was restarting a newsletter I used to run long time ago, and Evan Hamilton's 3-point Monday newsletter basically has stopped me, because I think, but how can I be, you know, what's the point of doing another similar newsletter? He does it so well. My old newsletter was literally every article that week that was out, so, you know, it was a different purpose. But yeah, so he's put the heat on me to try and figure out, well, what can I provide that's better than this, or at least, you know, complementary rather than just the same again. So no, it's brilliant. It's just three articles of the week. It's very digestible. His curation is spot on. So it's, what's it called? Community Breakfast, I think, comes out on Monday. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Christy, what about you? Is there anyone? I know it's hard to just pick one.
I have to say, I'm just going to go back to the person who inspired me the most community journey, and that's Erica Cool, right? So Erica left Salesforce. She set up her own incredibly successful community management consultancy. She's just so practical, and you know, she breaks things down quite easily. And because community management is actually a proper industry now, it's not like a baby infant industry. It's like you know, like a 7-year-old industry, right? You know, somebody who could go to the store on their own, right? They don't need mommy there all the time. So the industry is done really well. And so there's a lot more information out there. So, you know, I have all the people that you've referenced here today, Serena, you know, Jen Sable Lopez and, you know, Evan Hamilton, Blaze, you know, it's find the people who are talking about the things that you enjoy listening to and who are really helping you. And LinkedIn, I think, has changed as a platform as well. The share on LinkedIn is of a much higher quality now, and it's written in a much more friendly way. So I like LinkedIn to stay connected, but you know, attend stuff like this and see it, look to your local community manager to provide you with information and inspiration from the community management industry.
I like that. The nice little plug for CMX London and other community meetups may apply if I'm going to be BBC about it. But yeah, that's great, folks. I appreciate that. I think we're going to be heading into rooms. We're probably going to be heading into 5 rooms. So we've got a small kind of group just to chat through. So I'm going to ask the other CMX co-hosts, Lauren and Michelle, to join us. We'll probably be doing about 10 minutes of just checking on a couple of things. So let's check in on, our community stories and then how we stay motivated. So those are the 2 things that we're going to be focusing on in our small groups. So I think, is there some wizardry going on in the background on that?
Yeah, I'm just opening up the rooms now.
Thanks, folks. So feel free to head into your breakout room and we'll see you soon.
We always manage to get cut off.
Hi, folks. Welcome back. I've just restarted the recording. We're all re-emerging from the. Sometimes with the Bevy recordings, there's this gap of like 10 minutes with like a black screen. So I don't think that's happened this time, which is good. I know we've got just a few minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask every discussion group lead just to give a couple of minutes insight into the key things that you were discussing in your group. So should we start with Laura?
Sure. Yeah, I see that Michelle just wrote, sorry, we got cut off, and we also got cut off. But recognizing the time, I'll just give a quick debrief. Our group had everyone from a brand new community professional to some real seasoned pros. And people, of course, are tackling lots of different things. But I think a resounding thing that came up for me a lot, and Christy, you really spoke to this, and Oliver then highlighted in our group, is the need, especially in smaller community teams, to have that self-care and to be sure to really be clear about when you're available and into spaces and where you're just giving the most value to situations, understanding where your value is most impactful, and then really using it in that way, and kind of think about how they can show up better. So thank you to our group who was having a good conversation around that.
Thanks. That sounds really interesting. Blaise, what was your group focusing on?
Well, we had the main thread was newness in the role, and having discovered the function reasonably recently. So we ended up focusing quite a lot on how do you figure out what to do initially, whilst potentially under that self-imposed or otherwise pressure of having to deliver value or demonstrate value. So we really covered the concepts. I mean, I want Christy to jump in because she said it far better than I did. But I mean, certainly from my perspective, putting across micro actions, micro goals, one foot in front of the other, that ultimately you can't build anything out of nothing, but also you need to be able to experiment and iterate, and that's the best way of doing it. But no, Christy had a fantastic way of presenting.
Yeah, I just thank you, Blaise. That's very kind. I just said the company already knows that the community is valuable because they've hired you to look after the community. So don't kill yourself trying to prove the value of the community to the company. Instead, make sure that you're empowering your community, and that might mean understanding what it is that they need. It might mean so that you are audit tasks, so that you understand what your figures are. Most importantly, once you understand what your figures are, you can set some goals, but critically get stakeholder buy-in. Take your goals to your boss and say, this is the things that I think I can achieve. And it's not a huge list. It's maybe 1 to 2 things for the whole year, right? It's a slow burn. As I always say, a community is a puppy. It's not just for Christmas, right? It's for life.
Yeah, just this. The idea of actually and also it's a growing thing. So it's not something where it will take time to grow. And also with our skills and what we're focusing on. Someone said they love puppies. I agree, 100% a puppy fan. So yeah, anything to add, Michelle, to the discussion?
No, I'm just conscious of time, but I think by the end of it, we got through introductions and then we started to get into the good stuff. So yeah, hopefully we can catch up next time with the same people. Like everyone in my group was looking for some support and connections, and that's what we can provide here.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say hopefully future sessions will be looking at whether we can be delivering kind of peer support, more groupy sort of time, peer support time. And also our CMX Slack, there's a London channel, so you can always be connecting with folks there. There's a little plug that I'll throw in. Yeah, in terms, I'm conscious of time as well. My group, a lot around the pressure of internal education of community and making sure you've got that buy-in and you're getting that validation and appreciation for what you do, or getting to the point where that's starting to come through if you've got folks who don't understand community and what it can deliver. And yeah, and just thinking about, being clear on purpose and keeping us inspired, that appreciation validation aspect. With Community Manager Appreciation Day, we do need to mention appreciation and its importance. So I think I'll just throw that in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really great insights. I'm conscious of time as well. I don't know. We have 3 prizes. So 1 prize for all attendees. So it's not. I mean, the prize was listening to the wisdom. But anyway, we've got extra stuff for you. So 3 prizes. 1 is a pass to CMX Academy, which is where you can get some really practical, useful learning insights from the CMX organization. The 2nd prize is a CMX swag bag, which has many goodies in it, which may or may not include socks. And the 3rd prize is The Business of Belonging, which is a book by David Spinks, who is the co-founder of CMX and the VP of Community at Bevy. And yeah, really cracking book. So 3 great prizes. We've got a wheel of names. So I don't know whether we've got time to pop that wheel of names up or whether, what do we think? I'm conscious of people might have things going on. What do we think?
I have the wheel.
Do
it.
Yeah,
it.
do it.
Just go for it. Yeah, do it.
Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube. If you need to disappear, folks, this will be on YouTube, so you can come back and just validate that we've done this fairly and whatnot.
All right, wait, let's see.
All transparency here. Okay. So everybody who attended should be on our delightful wheel, and we will be picking some.
Are you seeing my screen?
Oh, is that coming? Oh, yes.
Are you seeing it? All right.
Got 26 lucky folks who may or may not be.
Where's the little button that says choose a? Oh, there we are.
Oh, it's live, folks. We're learning as we go.
We're learning as we go. All right.
Mandy, you are a winner today.
Is our first winner. All right, we've got 2 more. All right, looks like we got a second, Rebecca. And our final winner. And Tim. All right, we've got our.
Oh, how exciting. I'm loving how digital can help us do these things that we would normally do in person with like a box with scraps of paper. So I'm loving it. What we'll do, we have your emails on database. So what we'll be doing is we'll be reaching out via our friends at Bevy via email. And yeah, so prizes will be coming your way soon. Thanks so much, folks, for joining us today. Yeah, real pleasure. I really hope that you found it insightful and inspiring and helpful, which is what we always want people to come away from our events feeling. So all that remains for me to say is that, yeah, we're going to give you a little bit of an insight on what we're up to next. So I'll be handing over to Michelle.
Yeah. Thank you to Blaze and thank you to Christy for speaking. It was amazing to hear your insights and have you as our special guest speakers for the first event of the year. But our next event won't be till March, so keep an eye on your inbox for the next update. We haven't just sent it through yet, so keep an eye on it. And yeah, we will see you guys at the next event.
So thanks ever so much, folks.
Thank
Please
you.
come and join our chapter and find us on social, and you'll be hearing more soon. So as ever, thanks so much to our panelists, Christy and Blaise, who have shared so many nuggets of wisdom today. We could have got like 3 or 4 talks out of today.
Oh
So
my gosh, I
big
agree.
love to you both. And yeah, this will be on
Well done.
YouTube soon. So thanks,
Thank
folks.
you,
Take care.
Serena. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.